All new Pacific Mornings with Will on 531 PI.
It is 7:34. You're listening to Pacific Mornings on 531 PI. I'm William Teresi. It's great to have your company this Friday. Now, it was a big win for the ACT Party this week. Legislation reintroducing charter schools passed its final reading in Parliament. Now, the third reading on Wednesday saw passionate speeches both for and against the bill, which revives the alternative education model. Now, for a bit of context, a charter school is a school that receives government funding but operates independently of the established school system. But it begs the question, will it actually improve Pacific achievement rates or will it pave the way for more privatisation? Joining me now is charter schools advocates Alwyn Poole and PPTA's Austen Pageau. Good morning to you both. Thanks so much for your time.
Good morning.
Good morning, William, and thank you for letting me know how to pronounce Austin's last name. I've never worked it out. That's excellent.
Okay, well, I may even have gotten a bit wrong there, so my apologies, Austen. But look, I'll actually start with you, Austen. This is obviously a blow. From your perspective, what do you make of it?
It's disappointing to us, especially after more than 90% of the people who submitted submissions on the bill were against the bill. Now, of course, the minister claims it's because it was a union campaign, but we'd argue that, well, if there's so many advocates out there for these and so much demand for these schools, why weren't they coming out there and speaking for them as well? Clearly, I don't see a groundswell of support for them, and yet it's passed pretty much unchanged with all the things we're concerned about. Our main worries, again, is the lack of Official Information Act oversight over these schools, the secret contracts that the schools are going to have, so there's no transparency about what exactly, their contracts are, and just the loss of control and democracy with not having, those local communities no longer having a board of trustees, having kind of a corporate model of running these schools. So that loss of voice, that loss of control, that lack of local input, and all the secrecy it's going to be involved. Those are our main concerns.
That's a lot there. Your take on it, Alwyn? Obviously, this is a win from your perspective, but what do you make of Austin's comments?
Well, I actually think it's a win for New Zealand education. So one of the things that the unions have said is that this could be spent in the state system. Well, 153 million over 4 years is well and truly less than 1% of our education spend. The alternative that they have said is that, well, we can have 0.3 of a teacher aide in every school in New Zealand with this money. I think 50 schools for this money is a bargain compared to 0.3 of a teacher aide. And our education system is in really significant strife. You mentioned our Pacifica achievement. Well, even at sort of the highest school level, our Asian leavers are leaving school with 62%. Our Pacifica leavers, it's about 21%. Our Māori leavers, it's about 18%. And when you explain these stats to people, they're always sort of glazed over as if that's natural and normal. We need to do something about it. In terms of Austin's concerns about privacy, there's some of mine as well. I did present at the select committee. If my company, it's not just me, we've got a really good board of directors. It's a charitable company, so we're not aiming for profit. If we do get permission to run between 1 and 4 charter schools, we will voluntarily adhere to the Official Information Act and we will make our contracts public because I think that's important. It is government money. The reason for that's not about secrecy. It's a typical private-public partnership law, really, but we will voluntarily adhere to the Official Information Act requests.
Austen, just picking up on the point there from Alwyn, in terms of the achievement rate for Pacifica, and I've spoken to you about this in the past, but there were more headlines out this week painting grim pictures for Pacific achievement and Māori achievement. It is abundantly clear, based on those stats, that this education system that we have just is not working for Māori and Pacifica. So what is your argument there to ultimately get on top of that, if not charter schools?
I think you're going to see that Alwyn and I agree on a lot of things. We disagree on some of the solutions, but absolutely, there's no defending that the system has woefully underserved many of our priority learner groups, Pacifica Māori, neurodiverse students. There's a whole group categories of students who've not been well served under the state system as it is. That doesn't mean that charter schools are naturally the solution. One doesn't follow from the other. So where we're going to differ here is that we would argue that the vast majority of our students are still going to be in the state system, even if we do say set up a charter system. And that what we've seen overseas is that when you have two systems, and you have, for example, in the UK, you have an academy system, a free school system, and then the state system, it has not improved the outcomes for their priority learners. We haven't seen them not suffer from the same things we are suffering from, dropping down the PISA tables, continuing to see worse outcomes in lower income groups, continuing to see problems like that. It hasn't solved those issues. This isn't a solution for that. Now, if it, we're not against having, I think you called it last time, a bespoke kind of, designated character education school, having these available. And we do think that is a good place to go. We think that communities should be able to start designated character schools. They should be able to start schools that do, work with the culture of their local area more easily. The problem has been it's been very difficult to open those schools. Very difficult. The ministry has been very reluctant to allow designated character schools to be created, possibly because they're more expensive, because they tend to be smaller. And the formula works that way. It's more expensive to do. We think that's worth the money there. The problem is it's hard to open them. That doesn't mean that opening charter schools is the right way to go. We would say that you have, under the current legislation, the previous legislation, the ability to open these designated character schools that offer all of those solutions for more localized education curriculum, and yet do not have these pitfalls, the dangers that we see that I've just kind of enumerated, and one of which Alwyn touched upon there was that profit can be made here out of this charter school system. We think that's a very concerning thing, having the potential for profit. Now, Alwyn schools aren't going to do that. That's great. But there's the potential. Why have it in the legislation that allows for the possibility of even overseas companies to come in and run these for-profit charter schools? And we've seen evidence in this. It's not good. Whether you look overseas or anywhere they've operated. In Sweden, they've had them for 30 years. They're really cracking down on them. They said they've not worked well. So having that profit brought in, having that lack of transparency, we think that's the wrong way to go. There are better solutions.
Alwyn, that's a pretty relevant point there, actually, in terms of this idea that charter schools are ultimately for profiteering, if you look at it perhaps more deeply. What's your argument to that?
Well, I think we need to go back to some of Austen's further points. I mean, in terms of international stats and New Zealand stats, Austen's bringing a knife to a gunfight there, because I do study them consistently. And there are really good examples where charter schools improve things. And we're only going to copy the really good examples. We're not going to go after the bad ones and say that looks like a good plan. I mean, my challenge would be to the unions, because last time the charter schools came through, they spent 2013 to 2018, spending a massive amount of their members' money fighting them, instead of trying to improve the state system where Austen says most of the kids are still going to reside. So my challenge to the teacher unions would be to say, hey, look, some of these schools are going to get through. We're going to monitor them really closely, but we're going to really put our heads down to work with the government to improve the state system. And we're going to use our members' money that way. We're going to focus on that. We're going to be vocal about that. We're going to get alongside this no teacher only days during term time, and we're going to work our backsides off to improve outcomes in the state system for Māori and Pacifica. And look, last time, and I'm not picking on Austen, but I mean, in his school, the differential between Asian and Pacifica students is large. South Auckland Middle School in 1 year had their Pacifica students graduating or leaving and getting 88% of them through level 1 in their local schools. It's a really good result for a Decile 1 school. I share his concern. We applied for designated character schools, so did people like Nathan and Yvette Jury, Francis Valentine, during the Labour government, because they promised we would get them through. We got none. We all got talked to the hand. And they were really good proposals. Where were the PPTA advocating for us during that time if they suddenly believe in designated character schools? So it's a big deal, guys. PPTA, challenge to you. We are in an education crisis. It's a long-term one for Māori and Pacifica students and low decile students, neurodiverse students. Put your heads down. Improve your role in the system, improve the teachers that are in the state schools, get alongside the changes the government's trying to make to do that. Charter schools isn't the big solution. I don't think anyone's saying they are, but we can do things in areas and for children that aren't currently being served well. We can be a little bit of the solution. And last time we talked, William, I said I think the key solution is parenting, and I think the really key solution is parenting 0 to 5s, and getting those kids, regardless of the home they're born into, school ready by 5 years old, and having a head start. Because at the moment, Māori and Pacifica children are starting behind, and we're never catching them up.
Boy, Austen, that was quite a response there. Your right of reply?
Okay, so a few things touch on upon there. Um, it's interesting that Alwyn thinks that the unions have not been advocating for improvement in the state system. I would argue we have been absolutely, and that it's funny because the minister Seymour comes with all this boogeyman of the union that we're the ones gumming up the works, doing everything wrong, right? That we have all this power. I wish we did. I wish we did. If we had been, if we were being listened to the way that the ministers used to think that we were under the Labour government, then we wouldn't be in the crisis that we're in. We consistently have been calling for significant changes and improvements to the public system. I have a conference we're going to next week where we have a whole list of things we wish that could be done around cultural responsive pedagogy, around community liaisons. So we have connections, better payment for teachers who are making those connections between the Pacific and Māori communities in their schools, which the government's been reluctant to do. We have called for significant improvements in terms of pedagogy and class size and curriculum that, just because we can't wave a magic wand and make the government do what we want. Often what we are asking for is, it costs a lot of money, right? It costs money to do these things. Now, for example, we've talked about the 153 million, how could it be better spent in the public system? Well, we do think it could be, but that's just the first 4 years for the first tranche of schools, right? So it's not just going to be that much to keep charter schools going. It's going to be a significant amount more. That's just the opening amount. And we do think that that kind of money, and yes, more, would need to be directed into the system to fix some of the problems in it. As in terms of overseas results that were mentioned there, look, the Treasury looked at them themselves. They looked at these overseas and they said, the Treasury's own report said essentially that there's no real evidence one way or another. It's quite mixed results because you get very different charter systems in different places, and there's nothing to really argue in favor of them. There's no strong results saying they've all succeeded. You can point to individual charter schools and say they've succeeded, and we're not saying there aren't individual schools that do. Our issue is with the overall system, and if you look at the overall system, the good schools are balanced out by the negative. And while Alwyn may only follow the good things, there will be the potential under this model for the not so good ones, especially the for-profits we see in the States, like K through 12, K-12 education in the States, international online charter school has not always had great results. We see some very mixed results there. And also my school was actually mentioned there. I would just like to respond and say that, look, we do quite well for our Māori students, and we still have gaps, and many schools have gaps, but we are working on them. We're doing a program called Niho Taniwha right now that all the staff is being educated in, trying to improve the way that we work with our priority learner groups and get that right. It's a process, though, and that's what I think needs to be done when you have problems with the state system. The solution is to make improvements to that through improvements to the ministry, improvements to how schools are functioning through collegiality and collaboration. Schools need to work with each other. When there is a school that is doing the right thing, that has better results for its students, they need to be collaborating and sharing those results with other schools. That's why PPTA did support the Kahuiako idea, the communities of learners, to try to get that collaboration. This charter school model, if we expand it out the way the UK has, it's not collaborative, it's competitive. It's the free market. And why would a school that is in competition with another school share what is working at that school with it? If they're in competition for learners, the way that the free market works, they're not going to share. They're not going to help each other. It's going to be a harmful system that's going to break down and not lead to success being replicated across schools.
When you put it like that, jeepers, it's a scary prospect there, Austen. All right, I'll bring you back in.
No, it isn't, William. Can I come back on a few of those?
Come on.
Yeah. So I guess first of all, I have spent a good part of this week actually working in state schools about a 5-year goal setting plan based on improving their outcomes over the next 5 years on leavers data, which I think is a good thing. And in terms of the PPTA situation, I think the big deal is they don't talk about these positive things publicly. So they have to manage their own perception, because a lot of what they talk about is the charter schools. A lot of what they talk about is the negative conditions for staff, how badly children behave, these kind of things, which they're there. But I think they need to, if they're doing good things, bring a real positive bent to it. I mean, one of our challenges at present for the broad system is that a lot of articles coming out, a lot of data about the lack of graduates wanting to go into teaching. Now, I'm not sure in 2024 that our solution is 23, 24, 25-year-olds going into teaching. We've got a whole group of people who are, say, 35 to 55. 55, you've still got 10 years, 15 years potential as a teacher. Those people have got remarkable skills, already got careers. Some of them have done their parenting or in the midst of their parenting, but they have mortgages and they have commitments. So, I mean, I'd love to see the PPTA advocate for a whole group of teachers like that to come into schools, to be supported, to begin teaching, and to be fully paid from the beginning. Because I think that that's where our teacher workforce shortage can be solved.
Yep.
That would be a really positive movement. In terms of cooperation, we also work with Raymond Tipene, we work with Nick Hyde. We are really open to cooperating with any state school at any time. We don't see it as a competitive model. Austin's right. Schools need to work together. So, there are solutions to these. I would call them mini problems. And I'd much rather we talked about them than one group of protesters went down one side of the street and the other went up the other. We can be a part of the solution. We're not a huge part of the solution. The PPTA have got much more potential to be a bigger part of the solution. Let's get positive. Let's talk positively and get alongside each other.
Yeah, no, that's a lovely sentiment there from yourself, Alwyn. If I bring you back into this, Austen, look, I'm going to ask for an honest take from yourself, Austen. Do you want to see, given all that you've said today about charter schools, do you want to see this fail?
We don't want to see it fail exactly. We want to see the policy change. We certainly don't want to see these schools fail because these are going to be top priority, learners that are going to be in these schools. So we're concerned that it is going to fail. We don't want it to fail. We want, if anything, we'd like to see changes made so that it can be made basically more like the designated character school system. It'd be much better if we could have a lot more designated character schools without the pitfalls. But we're afraid of the pitfalls. Now, we're not saying their results are going to be terrible necessarily. We're worried that because this contracts are secret, because there's profit involved, there will be schools that will use methods of selective retention or selective admission. Now, technically, they have to let anybody in, but these parents have to sign up to the special character of the school. That special character is your kid is going to be here at a certain percentage to reach our targets, and if they're not, they're going to be gone. Well, that's how we manage it. State schools can't do that. So there are concerns about how they would manage to get to their targets. If there's a profit incentive to reach those targets, if there's the threat of a school being shut down to reach those targets, which is quite a hammer approach rather than a helpful approach, we're afraid that will result in these schools, some of them, fudging it. Not everyone, but we're concerned that there will be people, and the kids who are the most priority learners, the most vulnerable, they'll be the ones who pay the price for that. So we don't want to see failure. We want to see them brought back into the system. We want to see the system improved. And to Alwyn's point about whether we're being positive enough, I would say that PPTA does put out a lot of positive, actually, views in this. The problem is that doesn't always get picked up, as I think Alwyn will understand, by the media, right? That isn't what sells. That isn't what makes the news. So I'd say what we get heard about more is when it is the negative things. But we speak positively about the profession all the time, and about we do think it's a great profession. The last thing I'd say about that is that in terms of getting those teachers in, we'd agree. I think it's great. It would be a good idea to get those kind of teachers into the classroom, but having a set of schools which don't have a collective agreement, which can't have a collective agreement, which means a more vulnerable employment, which means more risky kind of precarious job security, is not going to be the thing that's going to attract these mythical great teachers that apparently the big boogeyman union is preventing from coming into the classroom. We don't think that people are going to get into the classroom for that. When you say less job security, less necessary, potentially worse work conditions, some schools like Alwyn's may do very well for their teachers, but that's, again, not guaranteed across the system, and that's the problem.
Yeah, and before I wrap this up, because we've got to go to an ad break, I just want your thoughts, both of you, very quickly. I'll start with you, Alwyn. Just the news that came out yesterday. Schools won't be able to hold teacher-only days during term time, and parents of students absent for 15 days could be prosecuted. All seems a bit too nanny state to me. What do you make of it, though?
Yeah, I'll ask that really briefly, but Austin, if we put in a concurrent application for a designated character school in Epsom for neurodiverse learners. Will you guys support that?
We would support having a school like that in Epsom. I don't know if the PPTA would support your particular application or any particular application, but the
Okay.
idea, absolutely, we would. Absolutely. I'm on the neurodiverse
Okay.
advisory committee for PPTA. We totally support that.
Yep. That's fine. So I'll get a copy of that to you in the next week or so. Look, I think teacher-only days are a very poor provision, William. I was so disappointed. I left the Villa Education Trust, I think, 3 years ago. Incredibly disappointed when they started taking teacher-only days. Incredibly disappointed when they started striking. So I can be very specific on that because they are decile one schools. And when you take a teacher-only day or you take a strike day, for Decile 1 schools, the parents at best have 3 weeks of annual leave. And you are asking them to either take a day's annual leave, pay someone to care for their kids, or put their kids on the street. And often those are at short notice, or the parents haven't noticed them coming up. They create a real problem. Teachers get 12 weeks holiday a year. We all know that they don't, that's not the entirety of it. They do a lot of work in those holidays, but it's still a huge comparison to compare to 3 or 4 weeks and the impact that that has on families. So I think teacher-only days should have always been in the holidays, and I hope they get alongside it. And often they're taken cynically. They're taken the Friday before a long weekend or the Monday after, and no one sees that as a good thing.
So very cheeky here. I know, Austen, this is a bit unfair of me to say, but if you've got a one-word answer, that'd be great. Just got to get to an ad break. But your thoughts on the truancy announcements and the term situation?
Would just say it shows that the minister actually does believe the ministry has a role, and that getting rid of the ministry, making them step away aside, is probably not the best thing, because here we see the minister saying we need the ministry to actually step in and do things. And we may not agree with the policy, but it does show that the minister is being hypocritical here.
Okay. Hey, thank you both for your time. I really thoroughly enjoyed that conversation. So thank you to you both. We're going to go straight to an ad break and we'll have your news at the top of the hour.